What is shakin', Internet? This is Salts bringing you the How to Tank for Dummies guide, Stoneguard LFR. Stoneguard is the first boss in the first section of Mogu'Shan Vaults, which in LFR is called the Guardians of the Vault. Briefly before I begin, I wanted to point out my brand spanking new UI. I've upgraded to using LVUI, which is a drastic but welcome change. I'm sure there are tons of videos out there already to see how to set it up, but if my subscribers really want, I can make a video of how to set it up and use this amazing little UI. As always, I'll be showing the trash leading up to the boss. This trash is pretty ignorable, but to briefly explain the mechanics, after a few seconds, one of the Quillian cat things will become frenzied and get really big. The main tank should be holding threat on all the little ads in place, and the off tank should taunt the big ad away from the little ones. The reason for this is because the big one gives a damage reduction, an AoE damage reduction buff to the little ones, like a 90% damage reduction to all AoE effects, to all the little ones. So you want to pull that one away. Again though, this is LFR, so it's completely ignorable, really. The boss itself is actually 3 bosses. The big Quillian lion things in the back are going to be the boss, and they all share a health pool. Let me first talk about each guard individually, and then go into the simple mechanics for the fight. There will be a random 3 of a possible 4 bosses each week. Of the 4, there is a Cobalt blue, Jade green, Jasper red, and Amethyst purple. Each has a unique ability, and I'll refer to them by colors to make it easier. The Cobalt, or blue, boss will periodically drop little crystal mines. These simply should be avoided, as they do a moderate amount of damage and root everyone in place when they explode. The rooting can be dispelled, but try not to get hit by them at all. The Jade, or green one, will periodically do a raid-wide damage move. It can't be avoided, so you can just ignore this ability. The Jasper one will do chains on random people in the raid. As a tank, you'll never get this, so you can ignore it too, but briefly for those non-tanks, the chains will do damage when the people linked by the chains are far apart. They'll break after 15 seconds of being apart, but they do more damage over time, so it's best if you just stick with your buddy. A bit of an advanced tactic would be to wait for the Jasper Guardian to start petrifying, but that's not really necessary in LFR. Just completely meaningless to tanks, don't worry about Jasper chains. The final Guardian, Amethyst, or purple, will periodically drop purple pools on the ground. These just need to be avoided. So let's sum it up real quick. For a tank, avoid the blue crystal mines that have the circle around them, and the pools. That's it. If the blue one or purple one isn't up, then you have even less to worry about. It only really becomes a problem if you get stuck in place by a blue crystal mine, so you get stuck by a crystal mine, and then a pool gets dropped on you. So you're stuck in place, and you're stuck in the pool. Try to make sure this doesn't happen. However, this is not quite as simple a fight as that. The real mechanics of the fight are actually petrification and overloads. A few seconds into the fight, a random guardian will start petrifying the group and show up a little bar on the screen. This bar even shows the color of the guardian that is doing the petrification. If that bar gets full, the raid gets petrified and you wipe. So how do we stop that? To stop it, the guardian that is doing the petrification needs to overload. Anytime any of the guardians reach 100 energy, they overload, doing a massive amount of damage to the raid. Well, massive is a relative term in LFR. If the guardian that overloads is petrifying the group, the damage will be reduced by 90% and petrification of the raid will stop. So to put it simply, when a guardian starts petrifying the raid, you want them to get to 100 energy. But how do you control their energy gain? Simple. Whenever a guardian is near another guardian, it will slowly gain energy. So if all 3 of the guardians are standing together, they will actually all gain energy. This is where the tanking strategy comes into play. First up, no-brainer strategy. This is going to be the most common thing to do in LFR. This is what happens in the video behind me, of course. The main tank should simply get aggro on all 3 guardians and tank them in a bunch. This is the simplest strategy in LFR because it requires no communication. If you are the off tank, simply stand on top of the main tank and taunt one of them off. This will help take some damage off of the main tank. If you happen to want to practice for the real fight, normal or heroic, here's the more complicated strategy. The main tank should start by grabbing 2 of the guardians, and the off tank should grab the 3rd. After a few seconds, one of the guardians will begin petrifying the raid. If that guardian is on the main tank, good for you, you're done. If it happens to be on the single guardian on the off tank, then the main tank should taunt that guardian off the off tank, and the off tank should taunt one of the non-petrifying guardians off the main tank. A straight swap, so that the main tank still has 2 and the off tank has 1. This is the basic idea of the entire fight. The off tank and main tank should constantly be switching the non-petrifying guardians. The reason for this is to keep their energy levels as offset from the petrifying guardian as possible, to avoid non-protected overloads. Let me give you a visual example. For example, let's say if you have red, green, and blue up. Blue and green start on main tank, with blue doing the petrifying. When blue reaches 50 energy, green will be at 50 energy too. That means they're going to blow up at the same time. So in this case, when green gets to 50 energy, the tank should swap green and red, which is currently at 0 energy. This allows blue to overload, while red is only at 50 energy. Let's go further and pretend that green started petrifying after blue exploded and overloaded. In this case, the main tank should take green away from the off tank, and the off tank should take red back from the main tank. Why red, you ask? Well, because blue just exploded, meaning it's at the lowest energy, theoretically 0. This cycle repeats over and over again. The best way to describe it is as follows. The main tank should always have the petrifying guardian, and the non-petrifying guardian with the least amount of energy. The off tank should always have the highest non-petrifying guardian on them. I want to note that in LFR, when a guardian is away from the others, meaning it's on the single guardian tank, it will actually lose energy very quickly, making the fight much more manageable if you decide to do this strategy. So let's quickly recap. First, don't stand in puddles or near mines. Check. Second, if you don't have a buddy tanking with you, ignore everything and just pile the adds together. Check. Third, if you want to practice for normal, keep 2 guardians, one of them petrifying on the main tank, while the other guardian is on the off tank, and continuously swap to make sure that the lowest energy guardian is paired with the petrifying guardian. Let's very briefly cover cooldown usage. The overloads are the hardest single hits in the fight. If you're going with a stacking strategy, all 3 overloads will hit at roughly the same time, 2 of which won't be reduced. Use your damage reduction cooldowns here. Additionally, the next highest damage you'll be taking is in the form of DOTs, applied by each guardian. Anything like Paladin's Hand of Purity will go far here, but it's really not necessary. This was going to be a continuous DOT, and the main tank should be having 2, and the off tank should be having at least 1. Let's see. If not doing the stacking strategy, just watch out for any stray overloads that won't correspond to the petrifying guardian. So, for example, if red is petrifying and blue is about to overload, you need to be aware of that because that's going to hit really hard. One last note. The guardians will take 90% less damage when another guardian isn't nearby, meaning when they're not gaining energy, they have very high damage reduction. But they have a shared health pool, so AoE moves are very effective at taking out the boss quicker. I hope I didn't confuse you too much, but it's actually a really fun fight to tank. It's much more enjoyable when you're able to communicate with the other tank, so I'd highly recommend doing it the normal way with perhaps a buddy. Still, being LFR, I doubt this will be a decent option. Last thing I wanted to cover is basic differences between this and normal mode to tide you overachievers over until I get the normal guide out. The main difference is 3 guardians versus 4 in normal. There's actually 3 guardians in 10-man normal, but all 4 are active at the same time in 25-man normal. Additionally, guardians do not lose energy when they aren't close to other guardians, which can be problematic. Otherwise, the fight just has much higher damage output. Well, I hope you enjoyed this guide for dummies. Please like, favorite, subscribe, all that jazz, and as always, you keep it salty, Internet.